Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural KU Symposium on the Behavioral Economics of Addiction. Today, we're going to be joined by some esteemed colleagues in the area of behavioral economics who will be sharing some insights on the notion of behavioral economic demand, design, analysis, and novel applications. We're going to get started today with just some brief welcome remarks from me and my co-chair, Derek Reed, and then we will jump right into the talks. So to get started today, we want to first introduce ourselves. So my name is Michael Amlung. I am an associate professor in the Department of Applied Behavior Science at the University of Kansas and the associate director for training of the Coffin-Logan Center for Addiction Research and Treatment at KU. My background is in experimental psychology and behavioral economics, and I've been doing research with behavioral economic demand tasks for about 10 years now. So it's a pleasure to have you today. I'll let my co-chair, Derek, introduce himself.
Thank you, Michael. I just want to begin by thanking Michael for putting this all together. The hub, the webinar, all of those things. Michael put in all the work for that, so I cannot take any of the credit for that. So thank you, Michael, for all that hard work. This is really exciting. So my name is Derek Reed. I'm a professor of applied behavioral science at the University of Kansas, where I direct the Applied Behavioral Economics Lab. I also have a research affiliation in the Coffin-Logan Center. My laboratory focuses on the translation of basic behavioral economic concepts and principles to address issues of societal importance. And while I'm not a clinical researcher or an addiction scientist per se, my work aims to solve applied issues while simultaneously advancing both basic and conceptual understandings of behavioral economics. So with that, I'll turn things back over to Michael.
Great. So we want to start by thanking our supporting partners. So the Coffin-Logan Center for Addiction Research and Treatment at the University of Kansas is a hub for integrating research, treatment, and training in addictive disorders. And we're trying to increase our national and global reach with seminars, training opportunities, workshops, and symposia like this one. We also want to acknowledge and thank the KU Department of Applied Behavioral Science for supporting both Derek and I and other trainees. You can check out their website and their Twitter feed right there to learn about their graduate programs, including a Ph.D. in behavioral psychology and the number of faculty at KU that have expertise in behavioral economics. And then lastly, just to emphasize that the University of Kansas Department of Information Technology provided the webinar license free of charge for today, which allowed us to have free registration for this webinar. We're very excited to see the turnout. I think we'll have fluctuating numbers throughout the day, but just looking at the registrations, we have over 185 registered attendees. We had a few more come in since I made this slide this morning. But what we're really excited about is we have attendees from 16 countries across the globe and 37 US states. So it's an amazing turnout for our first offering of this symposium. And I think by doing it virtually, we're able to access people all over the globe and all over the country. By now, you've encountered the virtual hub, which we've built to organize today's symposium. So the way this will work is the slides that you see on that screen will update throughout the day. So when you go to the next talk, you'll just refresh your browser and it'll have the Zoom link right there and the passcode will stay the same. The one exception is Dr. Murphy's talk, which will come right after this one. You'll just stay in this Zoom room and you don't need to change. The reason we broke it up into individual Zoom rooms and different links was because today's talks are being recorded. And instead of having one long 4 or 5 hour long recording, we're going to do individual Zoom rooms, which will allow us to break it apart into more manageable chunks. So make sure you refresh your browser every time you visit the hub, and you can see the links to the current talk that's happening. So if you come back later today and you're not sure what's happening, just refresh your page and it'll get you right into where you need to be. We also have posted PDF copies of the presentations for the 4 main talks today. So my talk, Dr. Murphy's talk, Dr. Reed's talk, and Dr. Aston's talk. The exception there would be the trainees who are not going to share their slides because their work is still in progress and much of it is unpublished at this point. So we want to make sure that we can keep their stuff sort of under wraps as much as possible. With that, I'll turn it over to Derek.
I'm going to provide just a quick overview of today's schedule. So to get things started, we will have Dr. Murphy give a presentation, followed by Dr. Amlung, and then Dr. Aston. And then following those 3 initial presentations, we will take a short 15-minute break. We will then return for the trainee data blitz talks. And then I will wrap things up with a best practices tutorial on demand curve analyses. And at the end, we will do a closing to just kind of summarize what we've done here. So at this point, I will begin by introducing our speakers. So we'll do this now rather than throughout the rest of the presentations. So our first presentation will be by Dr. Jim Murphy. He is a professor in the Department of Psychology and is director of the Health, Addiction, and Behavioral Intervention Lab at the University of Memphis. He's an internationally renowned expert in behavioral economics and addiction, and he's published over 120 papers and chapters related to college student drinking, addiction, brief motivational interventions, and behavioral economics. His lab has pioneered the use of hypothetical alcohol purchase tasks and measures of alcohol relative reinforcement. So we'll see these topics come up throughout the day. Our next presentation will be by Dr. Amlung, which we heard from already. And then following that will be Dr. Aston. So Dr. Elizabeth Aston is an assistant professor in the Department of Behavioral and Social Sciences and the Center for Alcohol and Addiction Studies at Brown. She was awarded a K01 Career Development Award from NIDA to conduct qualitative and quantitative research to modify and validate a behavioral economic measure of demand for marijuana. She's conducting some innovative lab studies comparing hypothetical and actual marijuana purchase tasks. So we'll be excited to see some of that work today. Following those two presentations, we will have, following the break, we'll have our trainee data blitz talks. The three individuals we have are up and coming stars in behavioral economics and addiction, so we're excited to be featuring them today. First would be Erin Ferguson, fifth-year doctoral candidate and NIAAA F31 fellow in the Department of Clinical and Health Psychology at the University of Florida. She's on the clinical health psychology track and works in the Center for Pain Research and Behavioral Health under the mentorship of Dr. Jeff Boiseno. Next would be Keenan Joyner, who is a clinical psychology doctoral candidate and Ford Foundation fellow in the Department of Psychology at Florida State University. We're excited to announce that he'll be starting a faculty position as a tenure track assistant professor of psychology in the clinical area at University of California, Berkeley in January 2022. And then finally is Dr. Gideon Nade, who is a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. We're proud to recognize he received his MS and Ph.D. in behavioral psychology here at the University of Kansas, where he conducted research in both the Applied Behavioral Economics Lab as well as the Addictions Lab at KU. And I do want to go over just a few brief important details to remind everyone throughout the day. First, we are recording all of our presentations. So just keep that in mind as you post comments and such. Secondly, we will be using the question and answer button to submit questions. Dr. Amlung and I will both be monitoring those throughout the presentations. So please do not put those in the chat. Please put those in the question and answer so we can organize them a little bit more efficiently. And finally, we would like you to follow along with us on Twitter and interact with us. The handle for Kaufman Logan Center is @AddictionKU, and the hashtag for today's event is hashtag KUBEHEcon2021.
Great, and before we jump into our first talk, I want to just mention that we have some upcoming events for the Kaufman Logan Center, which will be free and available to everyone. We do have our annual seminar series of distinguished scholars in the area of addictions. This fall, we're featuring Dr. Christine Lee, Dr. Dennis McCarthy, and Dr. Elise Weertz. So please check out addiction.ku.edu/events for information on registering for those. Even if they're held in person, there will be a live stream and a Zoom component so you can join from anywhere. The other thing that we're offering starting next month and then into October is a two-part workshop on best practices for publishing, peer review, and communicating addiction science. So we've brought together a group of experts in the area of science communication, as well as an associate editor and editor-in-chief of two of the leading journals in our field, to give us some guidance and wisdom on sort of demystifying the publishing process, as well as how to communicate your science to a broad audience of outside of the ivory tower. So once again, both of those are free events. So if you want to go to addiction.ku.edu/events, and we will hope to see you there. So with that, we're going to jump right into it. So as Derek mentioned, our first speaker today is Dr. James Murphy. You do not need to leave this room. You can just stay right here. But for the future talks, at the end of each talk, what we'll do is we'll remind you to log out of this Zoom window. We will close this meeting. Then we'll start the next webinar meeting, which will be the link on the next slide you will see in the hub. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing.